everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. And today we are going to be talking about my dominant green flags / what I look for in a dominant. I have a very old video that's, I think, close to this concept. I literally do not remember what I said in it at the time. But, you know, I've been reading a new book lately. It's not new, but I haven't had the physical version before. It's The Heart of Dominance, and it's really making me think about what I admire in dominant people and what I look for in a partner, because I think when you look online about stuff like this, like green flags for DS relationships or something like that, a lot of the stuff that you will see is like, they listen to your aftercare needs, and like, it's kind of shallow. I'm gonna be honest. Like, yes, we can all assume that you want a dom that knows how to use the types of toys you like to use. Let's think about this on a little bit of a deeper level. So I have made an internet-friendly numbered list of 10 things in no particular order that I look for in a dominant partner, and hopefully this will help you get the ball rolling on what you look for in a dom. Side note, please, dear God, this is not me trying to figure out if you, viewer, will be my dom or not. This is not an application process. This is not an open call for submissions. This is just me talking about what I look for, because over the last decade at this point, I have really refined what I look for in partners, and I think some of this is stuff that you maybe wouldn't have heard before, so we're going to talk about it. And the first thing that I have on my list is, number one, and this is very important, they are interested in me outside of kink / they have their own interests outside of kink. So I am looking for people in the way that I do relationships. So I will just say, as to lay groundwork here, because maybe you're not this way, maybe you would think differently about this. I look for DS relationships that are also romantic in nature. I want to date the people who are my dominants, generally speaking. Play partnerships, a little bit different, but even then, even if we're just playing, I want to be able to converse with you as a human being outside of that. And especially if we're going to be in any kind of romantic relationship on top of DS, I need you to be able to see me as a whole human being in person outside of kink, especially because talking about BDSM is part of my job. And so if I only ever do kink and talk about relationships, and that's my whole life, that does not feel fulfilling to me. I want someone I can have a conversation with about, like, politics or animal liberation or cooking or DIY stuff or weightlifting or outdoorsy stuff or poetry or like science fantasy novels. Like, I want to be able to talk to you about other things beyond just kink, because I don't think the kinds of relationships that I'm looking for last very long if you don't have anything else that you can have a conversation around. And also, I need to know that you, again, see me as a whole complete person outside of being a submissive, being a pet, whatever kind of dynamic that we are going towards. Because if you only ever see me as that one-dimensional object, it's going to be very difficult to negotiate anything on a person-to-person level, because you don't see me that way. You see me as a cardboard cutout. And this goes the same way for, I'm looking for somebody that has a life outside of just trying to pursue a kink relationship. Like, do you have a fulfilling career? Do you have other hobbies? Do you have friends? Do you have things that you do that are not this relationship? Is essentially what I'm looking for, because I like people that have their own complex inner worlds and thoughts that I can explore and talk to them about, and that we can eventually bond over. Because if the only thing that they're really looking for is just kink all the time, to me that generally produces a more shallow relationship, and that can totally work for some people, but that's not what I'm looking for. So that's number one. Number two, and this is kind of a vague one, but it is also very important, is my nervous system has to feel safe around them / they create a sense of safety. Now, One thing I like about this book, to just bring it up again real quick, The Heart of Dominance. One of the reasons why I really like this is there's a whole section early on that talks about like how to create a sense of safety in your dealings with other people. So if you don't even really know what that means, this book is going to be a really good guide for that. I don't want to spoil it. Please go find this book. It is very much worth the read, even years after being published. But I need relationships that are not super activating for me. I've been in relationships in the past where the people I'm with tend to be, let's say, more debate oriented. They part of how they relate to people, if I'm being charitable, is they find it bonding to argue or to have disagreements and debates, and I am not that way at all. And so I found dynamics where people like to kind of lawyer up in the relationship, I guess, to just not be great for my brain. And so I look for signs that my body feels safe and my brain feels safe being around them. So I look for relationships that are not going to be full of verbal conflict or yelling or debating. I think having disagreements and talking from a perspective of like, oh, what do you think about this? Oh, well, I actually think this, but your way of thinking about this is also valid. Like, those kinds of conversations are okay, but I want dynamics where, like, really in order to be able to submit, I think on a basic level, regardless, I think one of the things that we look for subconsciously is feeling okay around the person. Now, sometimes we might also be looking to feel a little scared or feel a little unnerved or feel intimidated, but that intimidation and fear has to come along with a much bigger piece of the pie that is feeling safe around the person. And do I feel calm? Do I feel relaxed? Do I feel respected? Or do I feel like I have to keep my guard up? I have to watch my words really carefully. I'm constantly afraid of getting into an argument. Like, I'm afraid of accidentally disagreeing with them. Like, if I have to feel like my brain is actively on the entire time that I'm around them because I'm constantly monitoring myself for, like, potential faults or flaws or mistakes that could result in something negative happening or being said to me, it's going to be really difficult to build a DS relationship based off of that. So I look for a sense of safety, which also creating a sense of safety in only what is talked about in this book, but also for me, a sense of safety is built off of a lot of the other components that I have outlined in this list. So whatever for you feels like safety, and I know for a lot of us, especially if you have like an anxiety disorder or you have a trauma history or things like that, it might be hard to understand what feeling safe feels like in your body. But if you can do a little interrogation to figure out what physical response do I have when I feel safe, that can help you identify in your relationships, especially for like, you know, you're playing together for the first time, you're going on the first couple of dates. After you've done those things together, how do you feel in your body afterwards? Which I know after scenes can also be a little confusing because they're also oftentimes physically exhausting in that. But if you feel emotions in your body that feel like safety, like for me, safety feels like a light sort of radiating happiness coming from like in my chest. And I notice that my muscles, especially my upper body, don't feel very tense. My jaw feels relaxed. I tend to carry a lot of tension in my jaw because, haha, I talk for a living, so of course I do. It's great. I recommend it. I don't feel a heaviness in my brow or in my back. Like it almost feels like after I've come home from going to a spa. Is like what I would compare it to. So I look for those physical signs and then I see how much the person I'm with makes me feel that way or not. And I also look for, when I'm going to see them, how does my body react? Is there tension, apprehension, anxiety? Am I afraid at all? Are those feelings that I want to be having and I'm having on purpose? Because again, sometimes playing with fear on purpose is fun. Sometimes we might be doing something that's going to be a little scary intentionally. Or does it come up regardless, even when I should be happy to see them because we're just going out for coffee, or we're only doing a regular cuddly date night versus a fear play interrogation scene. You know, if I'm feeling really anxious and nervous every single time I go to see a person, that's a sign for me to check in that something is off here, and either I've miscalibrated something, or there's something about the dynamic that is amiss that needs to be addressed. So that is number 2. I feel like I'm already like really going into a lot of detail on these, but hopefully they're helpful. Number 3 is they listen for my no's and they also listen for my yeses. And they also believe my yeses, which is an important addendum to that. I think a lot of people overlook that part. So essentially what this is about is like, do you have a robust consent practice in which you're not just hunting for a yes by any means necessary, but do you look at things, or can you look at things like verbal and nonverbal communication and other signals that might mean I'm like on the fence and veering towards a no. Or you're not like hunting to get a yes no matter what. Like you're giving me opportunities to say no. And then when it comes up, either through like me directly saying, no, I don't want to do that, or having a conversation where it's clear I don't really want to be doing the thing. If you can listen for those things and then respect that, that's really, really important. Like some of my best interactions I've had with newer partners, like early on in the relationship, that promoted a sense of safety and really contributed to like checking off this box. Though I don't like keep this as a physical list for my relationships, but it is something that comes up time and again, is they do things like this. They make me go, oh, like this is the kind of person I can relax around because I know that they care about my consent as much as they care about, like, getting to a yes, right? They will do things like have me be the one who's in charge of any kind of physical escalation in our play or in our relationships. So either I need to come to them ahead of time and ask for it, or I need to be the first one to do the thing in our relationship. Or they will listen for things, they'll ask for something, and if I, like, hesitate, or I'm like, they're like, that's a no. That's okay. What do you want to do instead? And they don't take a no as like a personal rejection. Like they can take a no with grace, and it doesn't mean the end of the relationship. There's no threats involved. There's no trying to talk me into it. Like it just is what it is, and that's okay. Let's figure out what we do want to do together. How can we get to that? But also importantly, on top of this, is they believe me when I say yes. And this sounds like a weird one, but there are some people, because of their upbringing, for whatever reason, or like other past relationship experiences, even if they hear a yes, they might not always believe it, because maybe they were taught at some point, like, oh, well, I can't really believe it when they say yes because it might be like a trick, or they're testing me, or they don't really want the thing and they're just flattering me, so I should really take their yes as a no anyways. And that aggravates the hell out of me. Like, I understand why it happens. I totally get it. But I try to communicate very honestly and directly in my relationship, so I only say yes to things when I really mean it. And when I say no, I really mean it. And things can change over time. Things can definitely update as a relationship progresses. But in the moment, if I'm like offering to clean for you, if I'm offering to do a certain type of scene, if I want to do a certain type of play, whatever, I'm not offering that to humor you. I have other options. I can do other things to get my needs met. If I want to do something, it means I really want to do it. I'm not copying people. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm not saying yes because I think that you need me to say yes to something. Like, if I say yes, I freaking mean it. So this is maybe a tip for dominants watching this, is like, think about how you respond to a partner, because it can also be invalidating to not be able to hear a partner's yes, because what you're telling them is, I don't really believe that you want to be my submissive or my partner or do these things. And you might be saying that you don't believe it from a legitimate sort of self-defense place, but that doesn't also make it not invalidating to the person you're saying that to, right? So like, practice believing your partner. It's a good thing to do, and I know that it's scary, but if you don't have that trust in yourself or in that relationship to really believe that they mean it when they say yes, or they can handle certain things, like, what are you doing in this relationship? That sounds like there's other work that needs to be done. So yes, no's, yeses, and believing yeses, all very important. All right, next up is having their words match their actions, and they have an accurate sense of who they are and like what they're about. So there's kind of two layers to this. I would say something that's been really helpful for me, that's like one of my big takeaways from my own personal work, is I am the kind of person where I tended to just believe people when they told me who they were. Like, I would just believe the words like, oh, they say that they really, like, care about this thing, and they're really sensitive, and they're this, and they're that. And then those ways of thinking about themselves would not match up to their actions. And then if I would even very gently point that out and be like, hey, so, like, this doesn't make sense, like, I didn't think that you were the kind of person who would do this sort of thing, like, what's going on? They would get very defensive, and they would shut down, and it just could not be a conversation. And there are people, for some reason, who have a very short image in their heads of the person they think they are that does not match who they actually are based on their actions. And so if you are interacting with a person and there is a discrepancy between how they talk about themselves or what they're going to do and then what they actually do, what they actually do is the part that matters. It's the behavior makes up the bulk of that. Words are okay because sometimes, we try but we fail, and that, can be part of the calculus. But if time and time again, they're saying one thing and then doing another, that is somebody that either isn't trustworthy because they are deceptive towards you, or they are self-deceptive. And self-deception, especially on a dominant partner, is very dangerous because if they don't know themselves, how can they know you and treat you the way that you deserve? Or tell you what they can contribute to a relationship, or how they would be able to uphold a dynamic if you made one together. If they don't know the very basics about who they are as a person and what they're capable of, how is that going to translate into a DS relationship? Probably not very well. So I would definitely say that somebody who really knows who they are and can accurately match up their words and actions is super, super important, because that is how you get trust and honesty in places where it really, really matters. Although it always does, but especially with kink. The next one is that they are able to be vulnerable with me, and the vulnerability in our relationship isn't one-sided. And part of that vulnerability means being clear about what they want. That kind of goes along with the last one I just talked about. But something that this book talks about that I'm like, did I just blank this out when I was reading this 9 years ago? Because I've sort of independently come around to the concept that vulnerability is the underpinning for especially primal play, especially DS. If you do not have some degree of mutual vulnerability, you cannot get to those places in relationships consistently, or to the complete fulfillment that maybe you would want it to have. I think, shorter term relationships, pickup play, that's one thing. But for a longer term relationship dynamic, especially at a higher level, you need to have some kind of vulnerability. And there are doms out there that believe that they need to act like these fortresses with these really thick walls and a moat, and that they're, beyond reproach, and that either they cannot be questioned at all, or they at the very least feel like they shouldn't disclose any of those things to their partners if they do have vulnerabilities, if they are sensitive, if they are hurt. This is kind of the flip side to something I've talked about in videos before, that Dom disillusionment syndrome, this idea that you need to be a certain way to be a dom. You need to hold up a certain fantasy portrait of a dominant being this unassailable, totally perfect figure. And that's not how reality is. And if somebody is really strongly clinging on to that vision of an invulnerable dominant who is beyond reproach, that, is off on their own little island in their own little castle, that's not somebody that I can genuinely submit to, because they can't arrive in the relationship genuinely, because they're literally walled up. They literally have built a fortress around themselves, and they call that dominance. And that's not really dominance, that's just being self-defensive. And is that controversial to say? Maybe, possibly, but there are people who get into dominance not because they legitimately want to have power in a relationship or want to be a leader in a relationship, but because they need a way to preserve their own ego, they need a way to avoid criticism, they need a way to avoid reflection, they need a way to avoid, hurt or shame coming from another person, and building up a giant fortress around themselves is the easiest way to make that happen. So vulnerability coming from both sides, where it's not just you as the S-type, like giving and giving and giving and giving. Really, you know, for me, not just being the one to share fantasies or stories and desires, but hearing that come back the other way. Super important. I've been in relationships where I'm like, I don't even know what this person's into. Like, they agree to stuff that I want, but they don't share their own inner landscape with me. Like, how can I learn to serve you if I don't know what's going on inside your head? Right? Was sort of the idea behind that one. Next up, we have, they are not intimidated by experience, or they are not intimidated by somebody else being able to contribute to the relationship. And this is definitely a personal one for me because, again, this is my job. I talk about this all the time. Like, I'm not like the biggest known figure in the kink universe, but like, I do have a lot of experience. Even if I wasn't somebody who taught about kink, like, I've been doing kink relationships and I've been doing DS pretty much the whole time of the last 10 years I've been in the community. And there are a lot of people, even around my age, who do not have the level of experience. And I cannot tell you the number of times I have started to talk to somebody, or I have gone on a date, and then, you know, maybe immediately afterwards, sometimes like months later, I will find out, oh, well, like, you know, I just was too intimidated by you. I was just too overwhelmed by, like, your knowledge or something. Which, like, it sounds like I'm being egotistical, but these are legitimately things that I've, like, had people tell me. And I've had people who initially seem really interested in pursuing a relationship with me kind of, like, get started with it and then, like, back off. And then I'll find out, like, oh, well, like, you know, I just thought that I wasn't experienced enough for you. I didn't know that how I could, like, meet your needs. And it's like, well, but I was willing to, like, work with you on that. Like, I wasn't under any illusions that you had, like, the same amount of experience, and that was fine with me. And people just, like, shoot themselves in the foot, honestly. They just get in their own way, and they decide that they're not good enough, and then because they've already decided that, then, like, nothing can change their opinion, and it's really sad. So I like relationships where I can contribute as not an equal necessarily, but, like, my brain is equal in the sense that, like, I also have good ideas. I have brain power to contribute to the relationship. Please allow me to express that and not silence me because you think you have to in order to, like, stay in control. Because that's just silly and is, like, it's very, like, a baby dom way of thinking of, like, yes, to be fully in control, I must never take any suggestions from this whole other person who's 50% of this relationship. All right, next up is they can clearly communicate, set boundaries, and know their limits, and they also know when they need to say no. And I mean, sort of, when I say that they can communicate, I mean both in the sense that they are, like, physically capable of having hard conversations, and they also communicate clearly and have the self-knowledge to be able to do that. I need to be in relationships with people where I can trust that they will say yes when they mean it. They will say no when they mean it. They don't shirk away from hard conversations. They don't put things off until the last minute when we need to negotiate something. And they can come to the table and talk without getting overwhelmed every time or shutting down. And I will absolutely make allowances for, like, trauma and past experiences and big emotions to happen. Those are all totally fine. But when consistently you cannot show up to a conversation or to a negotiation, and it results in a shutdown when you try, or you just don't even really know how to have those conversations, how do we even have a relationship if we can't talk about what we're gonna do in the relationship or what we both want from it, right? Like, how does that work? Like, am I supposed to just guess? Like, are we gonna blindfold each other and throw darts at a board and then, like, see what happens? Like, if you don't really know what you want, if you don't know what your own limits and boundaries are, and you only ever say yes to me because that's important to get to stay in a relationship with me, you believe, that's not going to be a strong basis for any kind of dynamic, and especially knowing when to say no. And I mean, like, knowing when to say no for yourself, and also when to say no to, like, me and my ideas, because I have a lot of ideas. I talk about this stuff all the time, and sometimes I don't have good ideas. Sometimes I don't say things that are going to work for that particular person. And I don't want somebody to just humor me because they think they have to. I want somebody who can tell me, like, you know, thanks for the idea, but I don't think that sounds like me. Or, you know, I could see why you would be interested in that, but I don't think that's something that I'm interested in. Like, you can communicate a no without it just being like, that's silly. Why would you be into that thing? That sounds ridiculous. Like, you know, like, there's ways you can say no softly, but also still being direct with saying a no. And especially if you're the kind of person who, like, hedges everything and sugarcoats stuff and, like, doesn't get to the point, I get confused. I need you to tell me, is this okay? Is this not okay? Do you want to do this or not? And if you make it ambiguous, it's going to be real difficult for me to know what to do. So please, clarity and communication, super important. It's a skill you can practice. If you don't know how to do it already, most of these things are things you can also learn, by the way, if things are coming up for you as you're hearing this list. All right. Actually, speaking of being silly, this is kind of a funny one for number 8 here, but I need them to be able to be silly with me. This actually goes back to the number 1 that I talked about of, like, getting to see me as a whole person outside of just kink. I love a high protocol night. I love, you know, rules and decorum and expectations. Those are all fantastic. But if I'm going to be in a long-term relationship, there needs to be levels that our relationship can exist on that go from, like, high protocol to silliness, and sometimes even high protocol with silliness, because that can be a thing that happens. Like, I need someone that I can joke with, that I can send silly memes to, that it doesn't have to just be super serious all the time, because human beings are not super serious every second of the day, forever and always. Some people tend towards DS, where even if they do have silly moments, maybe they don't let that out with the partner. But I want all of the emotions. I want all of the emotions. I want all the different ways of feeling. I want all the different sensations. Like, I love sensations. I love feelings. I want to play with all of them because that is fun to me. And part of that is getting to do that with a dominant partner, especially because a big part of most of my DS relationships has been pet play. And if I cannot be silly little puppy with you, there's going to be an element of my submission that I can't really be at the table. And that's always going to feel sad to me. Not everyone wants to do pet play. Not everyone brings that side out of me. But if I'm thinking of my ideal, you know, what I want for my perfect dominant partner, getting to be silly with them is a piece of that pie, absolutely. Because not only do I need to be able to feel like I can joke around with them, I need to know that they don't always take themselves super seriously, and they can also laugh, and they can also joke. And part of that is just, you know, it's laughing with people is a really nice bonding activity, especially as sort of a sweet to the sour of, like, emotional sadomasochism or, like, high protocol or something. But also because if you are super serious all the time, in my experience, though, I don't have any evidence of whether or not this is, like, actually true. This is just pure speculation on my part and my own anecdotal evidence. I sometimes feel like people that are always super serious, and I am generally a serious person, but I have my silly moments. If you can never be silly at all, I worry about there being, like, a fragile ego under there, and fragile egos do not take constructive criticism well, or change well, or adjusting the plan well, and I need to make sure that there's not going to be, like, fragile egos taking up, like, relationship space, you know? So that is the importance of being silly. All right, next one is they are kind and compassionate. They know when to be cruel on purpose versus because their emotions got away from them. So I said I liked having all the emotions, all the feelings, all the experiences, but part of that is being with a partner who knows their emotions and then knows when to intentionally engage with them or kind of siphon them off in different directions without necessarily always, like, stuffing them down. Like, people who stuff down all their emotions like a trash compactor, that's generally not healthy in a relationship or not, but especially in DS. And if I'm going to be with somebody where emotional sadomasochism is part of the arrangement, especially with things like anger or fear, I need to be totally certain that those feelings are being expressed intentionally, not, like, the scenes are not happening because somebody's angry. The scene happens, and so they learn how to access emotion inside their brain. Does that difference make sense of, like, starting play because you are angry to vent that out in a way that might not be healthy versus doing a scene that's planned and then tapping into anger during the scene. Hopefully, I think that's a distinction that makes sense. Maybe that's really only in my head, but especially like kindness and compassion are really important. Like having a partner who knows when is the right time to pump the brakes versus put on the gas. Having a partner that knows like this is a moment for like tenderness and understanding versus, a verbal dressing down or like starting an argument. That's so important. And I wish I had better ways to explain how to do that if you don't know how to do it. And I think part of that is just like learning as you go along as a human being. But I think, at least for my style of submission, other types of people maybe don't feel the same way. But because I'm not somebody who is only motivated by like, punishment and cruelty and like a cold, distant dom, I want to have people that have not necessarily a caregiver side in the sense that I want to be taken care of, but have the ability to be soft too and know not just only ever use the hard stick, right? They have, I don't know, like how the phrase, like carrot and the stick, like I need to know somebody has access to both and knows when to use both the carrot and the stick as opposed to only ever using the stick. And then personally, I just like enjoy being around like compassionate, like tender-hearted people is like just a personal attribute. So that's really all it is just for that part of it. And then finally, our last one here is they actually work on themselves. Because boy, howdy, I have discovered as I've gotten older that there are people out there who will talk to you until they are blue in the face about all the podcasts they listen to and the books they've read and the self-help and the workbooks and the therapy. And then you're like, really? You've been seeing a therapist for 10 years? Oh. Like, you just know when there's people is like, is your therapist just taking your insurance reimbursement? Like, what's happening here? Like, it was like, you say you're doing a lot, but half of the process is doing the reading or showing up to the therapy session. The other part of it is actually putting it into practice. And there are a lot of people that like to just read self-help or like to read psychology books because they think they're entertaining or they think it makes them interesting or makes them a better person. And they don't actually apply it to their real life at all. Like they've read the relationship books, they've read the self-help guides, whatever. And you're like, oh, well, like, this should be a really basic point that, like, by the fourth book that you've read of this, like, you should understand what this is, and then they just don't. And so genuinely working on themselves in a concrete way, can they follow through on plans that they make for themselves to change their life if they want to, whether it's, like, eating habits or sleep schedules or work stuff or anything. I like, maybe it's just me, but I definitely get really turned off, especially early on in a relationship, when a partner, like, I hear from them over and over and over again that they want to change this thing, they want to do this, and then they just simply cannot do it. And I understand that, like, ADHD exists and it's a thing, and, like, pretty much all my partners have it in varying levels. Totally get that. But there's a self-awareness that has to happen there, and that's the important piece. Like, there's a, like, saying I want to do this, saying I want to do this, and either not taking the help to make that possible, or being in denial about it not being possible for them with their current skill set, or, like, kind of just talking about changing without really ever putting any effort in. And that's totally different than understanding your own limitations and what you're currently capable of. Like, I'm looking for self-awareness, I'm looking for growth, I want people that are curious and want to learn and don't just like read things to read them, but actually put that knowledge into practice versus just having it collect like outside of their brain. Like it's locked in orbit around their brain, but hasn't actually broken through the atmosphere, like you just have space junk floating around your brain as opposed to actually landing anywhere that it needs to go. So look out for people that have space junk brain, I guess. Is that a phrase? I don't know. But in any case, that is my list of things that I look for in a dominant partner. If you are a dominant, I would be curious if any of this surprised you at all. If you are a submissive, or if you're curious about it, I want to know what your list is. Is it totally different from mine? Does it seem similar? Does this give you stuff to think about? Because again, the point of this is not, like, this is not an open application process. This is not me being like, apply to be my dom, like, I'm good. But it's about, like, hey, so, like, what's a green flag for a dom that goes beyond, like, does aftercare and knows how to use a flogger? Because I think we're ready to have those conversations. For sure. And yeah, leave your thoughts in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this not already, please do subscribe, because I make videos every week talking about kink, BDSM, relationships, and so much more. And finally, if you really want to support what I do, you can do that over on Patreon. That will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.